Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to the infinite way where spirituality meets humanity. And it brings me great pleasure to introduce our guest today, which is Litmus A Freeman. And we are going to discuss the Freeman Project today. Now, instead of doing a kind of botchy job on trying to introduce Litmus, I am going to ask Litmus to introduce himself. So welcome, Litmus.
Welcome, Manolia, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I have life experience as a father, uh, and before that as a child and a young adult, obviously. And now I have experience as a grandfather, which I'm very happy about. My granddaughter's just over 1 year old. But as far as kind of work goes, I'm a former corporate business manager in Britain. So 25 years in the matrix.
I can commiserate with
Yeah. So that was in the energy industry, which is kind of cool now because it's, when I think energy, I'm also working with energy now, but in a completely different way.
yeah.
um, but it is about vibrations and waves, and generation of things and all of that. So it's kind of it's interesting. But yeah, it was corporate experience. I did electrical engineering to degree level. I did diplomas in marketing. I did an MBA in strategic marketing, which I never completed because by doing that, I saw that I needed to get out.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and I was employed in the retail business, but I did work across the whole gambit: generation, distribution, contracting, lots of things. I basically was a commercial manager, business manager, did project management, which I really enjoyed. Um, I was a sustainable development manager back in the 90s, which was quite early for that kind of thing. And yeah, worked internationally. I worked for in Australia for over a year, and also did stuff in New Zealand and Germany and the US and Norway. Um, but pretty much exactly 20 years ago, I've just recently celebrated my anniversary, 20th anniversary. I quit employment, um, which I later found out, if you look up the definition of employment, it's one of the definitions is to be kept busy and occupied. So actually, when I think of my working days, I was being kept busy and occupied, so I didn't have time to do other things like raise my vibration and increase my consciousness. But that started to happen, and I knew I needed to get out. So yeah, I quit employment. So I escaped from the matrix, woohoo, which I was
Yeah.
very happy about. Um, yeah, and then I mean, I was gonna carry on privately working and associated with energy, but the universe took over, and we haven't got time to go into it now. But maybe it'll come up while we're talking. But through a series of amazing kind of synchronistic coincidences, yeah, I ended up just going into music full time. Set up a little music business for 5 years. Lots of things to do with music, teaching, recording, production, recording bands, doing gigs and putting on shows. I played on the BBC with my band and solo. But also I was getting into activism.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I kind of got disillusioned with protesting because it seemed to me that the state kind of likes us to protest because it ticks a lot of boxes for them. Um, so in the autumn of 2008 in the Gregorian calendar, I came across this free man on the land stuff. And some of it sounded like BS, and a bit urban myth kind of stuff. But a couple of things I heard about it associated with tax and things, I just wondered if I could use it as a more effective way of protesting rather than marching in London. I came across a guy who was a lawyer, and he was basically saying, if everyone who protests stop paying tax, this will make a real difference, you know.
Right.
Because when we pay taxes that we know are being used to kill innocent people abroad, we are actually complicit in those war crimes, you know. So yeah, I studied basically Freeman, the hypothesis, and I thought, well, I used to be a project manager, so I'll run it like a project, you know. I'll set up a project and I'll do it all properly, evaluation and get a plan together, you know, and I did it all like a business project, you know. So
Okay.
basically,
Okay.
I kind of studied law and how the system works, really, law, politics, economics, business, religion, the media, all that kind of stuff. For you know, pretty much full time. I mean, I really got into it. Probably for about a year full time, and then carried on from there part time. So I ended up from sort of 2009 onwards, I ended up presenting what I call Project Freeman at festivals in Britain. And then in 2010, I hit the road. I went on the road in my camper van. And I lived out in the van on the road in Europe, playing music and, as I say, doing festivals and presenting and stuff. And I was, you know, I was based in my van for 10 years till 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. And during that time, about 12 years ago, I created a calendar, which has become a big passion of mine, to share that with the world and explain why I created a calendar and how that can help us to raise our consciousness. That led me to studies of astrology. I also set up a trust for traveling creative people, called the Troubadour Community Trust. Yeah, and then from about 5 or 6 years ago, I started to base myself more and more on the west coast of Portugal, and that's where I am now. I got a lot of gigs here. I got a band here, and I do workshops here, and now also online. So yeah, you know, it's been quite a journey. But I gotta say my work-life balance is much better now than it used to be.
I
And I
so commiserate with you regarding the work-life balance and everything else. There is so much richness in what you've just said, and there's so many different directions we could go. I want to learn about the Freeman Project. However, before you go there, and maybe this is a part of the Freeman Project, I think it's really important that you share about why you created your own calendar and what that means.
Yeah, sure, okay, good question. Um, it's really, you know, it's a lot to do with my passions.
Mhm.
My passions are music, creativity, but also nature and nature cycles. I'm really into symbolism, also ancient history, and you know, trying to stay healthy. But I love change, you know, and obviously creating a new calendar and then living by it is quite a big change in one's life, you know. So, but you know, I'm really mostly, if I really summed up what I'm passionate about, is how and why things work, especially the universe. Okay, so I got I got to the point where I'd been living off grid in my van, and you know, sleeping out under the stars and by rivers in the forest and the mountains in France and places like this. And I was walking around talking to God, you know, like literally kind of finding myself, you know. And you just kind of lose track of what day it is, you know. You just wake up when the sun comes up, and when the sun goes down, you start feeling tired, and you go to bed earlier, and you go to bed earlier in the winter and rest more, and you get up earlier in the summer and do more things. You just kind of go with the natural flow of things. So that was really interesting me, having been driven by the clock and the calendar for 20 odd years. Well, starting from school, really, you know, this is what I call core conditioning, you know, from a
Right.
very young age. We're told, oh, come on, it's Monday morning. You got to get up. You got to go to school. You got to have a bath Sunday night. You know, we get conditioned into this pattern of behavior, but none of it's in sync with nature. So yeah, I was just kind of, the thing with Project Freeman, it was in three parts. So it was free the body, free the mind, free the spirit. And having freed my body from the matrix using the Freeman stuff about how the system works and how you can be more master of it rather than slave to it, then you get free and you have time then. And I call that time to be. And when you have time to be, you can open your mind to the universe and say, right, guys, what do you want to tell me, And one of the things they started to tell me, or I started to pick up, or whatever it is, was about calendars and clocks and control, So I'd be walking on the beach and I'd be drawing circles in the sand and cycles and sine waves and things, and just kind of how does this all work, And it got to winter 2012, and there was a lot of talk at the time about the Mayan calendar ending, in 2012 winter solstice, the world's going to end, and all this stuff.
Yeah,
If you remember that, right?
I do.
And then back in 2000, we'd had all this millennium bug sort of rubbish, that all the systems were going to crash because they didn't have 4 digits for the year in all the computer systems, and that was a
Yeah, I
complete load
remember
of
that.
BS. It made consultants a lot of money, So yeah, it was winter 2012. I was living in my van on a beach with 2 other guys. One of them was a Wiccan bowsman, so he was kind of a pagan guy. Good friend Roy, and he, on the side of his van, he had this Celtic symbol, and it said the old ways are alive,
Yeah.
So he was kind of reminding us of how things used to be before organized religion, where people, in a lot of indigenous people, they live in sync with nature. They don't live by some man-made structure or something, that's artificial. So they're much more in tune with their body and the rhythms and circadian rhythms and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he had a book about druids, bards, and ovates. So, I'm from Celtic origins. I'm from Cymru, where they speak Cymraeg. Now in English that's called Wales, and the language is called Welsh, but that is a derogatory term. If we look at the etymology, it's derogatory. It's calling us strangers and foreigners in our own country by the people who invaded. So I started getting into all the etymology and stuff. But basically I was thinking, well, I was reading this book, Druids, Bards, and Ovates, and they would have basically been what in English we would call Welsh people,
Right.
and Celtic people and Irish people and this kind of thing, right? And in the middle of this book, it had like the wheel of the year, and it was round, and it had the equinoxes and the solstices, and it had these 8 moon festivals where they would celebrate on a moon and light a fire. They called them fire festivals, and they had all these strange old Celtic names and things, which was fascinating. But that just really resonated with me, like I thought, oh yeah, this looks much better than a box with 7 days on it and all of that kind of thing. So I was thinking about all that, and then about the same time, my brother, who's kind of what would you call it, secular, or is it non-secular? But he's not into organized religion,
Non-secular.
non-secular, right? So he's like a humanist, I guess. And he said, wouldn't it be great if we had a calendar where we didn't have all this expectation of Christmas put on us, So,
Yes.
all the expectation to get together with people you might not want to get together with, and you might not want to do it at that time, but it's Christmas, so you have to, and there's the kind of commercial side of it and the religious side of it and the sort of family pressure side of it. Anyway, he said, oh, it'd be great if we didn't have Christmas. And I said, well, I like this old Celtic calendar thing. And I said, oh, maybe I'll create a different calendar, and we won't have Christmas in there. yeah, so these kind of things started to happen. And then around that time, I was in the southwest of Portugal, a place called Sagres. It's like the Land's End of Europe, if you like.
Mhm.
It's as far southwest as you can go till you reach the ocean, you know.
Right.
And I was parked in my little VW camper on a cliff looking over this beach called Moretta Beach. Um, and it was winter, but the weather's great in the Algarve in the winter, which is one of the reasons I was there. Because if you live in a van, you don't want to be in the cold.
Right.
Right. Um, so I'm each morning I open my curtains and look out at the beach, and there's this lovely golden sandy beach and beautiful clear ocean and cliffs, and there's nobody on this beach. It's empty. It's like I go there and I've just got the whole beach to myself, you know, and I think, wow, I'm so lucky, you know, where is everyone? And this happened for 3 days. And then the fourth day, I open my curtains, I look out, and there's people everywhere. And there's vans, and all the cafes are open, and there's surfers everywhere, and it's busy, 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 you know. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? You know, is the Pope visiting or something? It's like,
Right.
so I looked in an old diary or something I had, and it was because sorry, I mean, I'm in my van now. I had no laptop, I didn't have internet. I basically had one old Nokia little phone thing with text, you know. I had no devices, no nothing. So I realized then it was Saturday, okay. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and of course, the next day, Sunday, it was the same. And then the
Busy.
following day came, and guess what?
They were all
Empty
gone.
beach. They were all gone. You know, and it was like I had one of these sort of moments, like this is crazy, you know, what are we doing? So, and then I imagined all these people who'd come to the beach for the weekend. Now they were all gone to work, you know, and the beach is empty, but they're driving to work and it's busy on the road, you know, and then they go out for lunch from work and all the restaurants are full, you know, and they drive home and it's busy. And I just thought, and I remembered how it was for me when I was in that world. And you think that the world is overcrowded, you know, you feel like it's very busy everywhere you go. But it's not, you know, it's actually very, very empty. It's just that everyone's crammed in to the same place doing the same things at the same time. And I thought, well, that is because of the clock and the calendar, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Right. And then I thought, well, this is core conditioning. You know, this is something that's put on us as very young children. As we said earlier, you know, you got to go to school and then you got to get a job. You got to go to college. You got to, you know, it's all schedule, timetable, weekdays, 5 weekdays, weekdays, weekend, you know, 7 days. That's it. Keep rinse and repeat, you know. But I wasn't in that world anymore. And I had the whole beach to myself, you know. And then
Yeah.
if I wanted to go shopping, I would go off peak when everyone else was at work or whatever, you know, and I'd walk around the supermarket and there's hardly anyone in there, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I thought, well, I'm going to come up with a calendar that ticks the boxes for my pagan friend and my brother and myself, and is actually in sync with nature. And the main thing, I don't want a 7 day week. And I don't want weekdays and weekends, because to me that was the thing that really drove people's actual behavior most, you know.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm in my van. I had no technology, so I had good old fashioned pencil and pen and a journal. Okay, and I'd been journaling a lot, you know, because I was on the road and I was having these amazing adventures and experiences, and really growing and maturing for probably one of the first times in my life, even though I was in my 40s. You know, I'd left school and worked and then got married very young and had kids young, and I had to kind of, I guess I had a bit of arrested development, if I'm honest. And I was doing that in my 40s, you know, after I'd quit my job, and I wasn't didn't have the responsibilities that I had before, and I was more free, you know, and I was off off on the road. So yeah, I'm in my journal and I thought, well, if I want to create a calendar, like what is a calendar? What's that all about? Um, and I thought, well, mostly it's about the year, right? It's about the year cycle.
Right. Right.
Right. So I imagine, right. So I'm an alien from another planet, right? And which, to be honest, I've kind of felt like most of my life, if I'm honest. And I meet a lot of people like you and others I meet in this kind of, they identify with that when I say I've often felt like an alien. They go, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, so I'm from this other planet and my guys have sent me to Earth, right? They've sent me like a scout ahead in my spaceship. And they're saying, right, you go there and suss out how it all works there. And then send back some info and tell us where and when to meet you, when we come.
Right.
I thought, okay, so what happens? So this planet is like the third planet out in the system, and it goes around this sun, and it takes this long to do it. And there's these other, there's this sun and there's this moon and there's these other 8 planets. So, and of course, I knew that one of the roots of the 7-day week is the names of the sun and the moon, the 5 visible planets. I've been into astronomy since I was 12 when my brother took me up on the garden shed roof in the stargazing.
Yeah.
So I knew about, Sunday, moon day, and the origins of the other days being named after the 5 visible
Planet.
planets.
Yeah.
But I thought there's not 7 planets. I'm looking at this system and there's the sun and 9 other planets. So shouldn't there be a 10-day week, not a 7-day week?
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, oh look, we've got 2 fingers, the sun and the moon, and 2 thumbs, sun and the moon, and 8 fingers, the planets. So maybe we should have a 10-day cycle. And I tried dividing the year into 10-day cycle and it really worked.
Yeah.
So I had 360 days, which was 36 periods of 10 days, which is the same as the degrees of a circle. So I thought that must mean something. But then I had these 5 days left over. But I knew the main thing with the calendar is we're talking about the year, which is basically the relationship between the Earth and the sun, yeah?
Right.
It takes these 365 and almost a quarter days for this planet where my guys are going to meet me to go around its sun. So I've now got 360 days, 36 what I call deacons of 10 days, but I had these 5 days left over. So I thought, well, if I knew about the equinoxes and the solstices,
Right.
and as far as I understood it back then, that kind of started the seasons. So spring started in the Northern Hemisphere, like around March the 21st or something like that. And then summer started on my birthday, which is June the 21st. So I thought, well, that's got to mean something. So I thought, well, if we have a special day for the 2 equinoxes and the 2 solstices, and then a special day for the year, a New Year's Day to celebrate another cycle, that's our 5 special days. And then we've got 365 days. And I knew there were 12 zodiac constellations. For some reason, there was 12. I didn't know why. But I thought, okay, well, I'll stick with 12 months and try that. So I had 3 of these 10-day deacons per month. And I had 3 months in each season. And I did that and it just worked like clockwork. And it
Yeah.
repeated the same every year. So it was what they call perennial. So it was basically, I created a perennial solar calendar for the whole which works the same wherever you are on planet Earth. Okay. And I did all that in my head, in my van, in my journal. And then I drove to an internet place in the little council building in the nearest town. And I went on the internet and started researching calendars. And then that opened up a whole world of exploration, which ended up with me getting into astrology.
Which I want to actually talk to you about the astrology, but I'm going to pivot and just say, okay, talk to us a little bit about the Freeman project. And then what I will do is I'm going to reserve the right to bring you back to talk about Zodiac if we don't have enough time.
Oh, I'd love to, Enolia. That would be a pleasure. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the Freeman project, that's called Project Freeman.
Okay.
So it started on my son's birthday in 2008. And if you want to look at that, it's projectfreeman.com,
Thank you.
which is now really, it's really, part one of that is really an archive now, because there's a lot of information I did at that time. Took a lot of work, but I basically put all my experiences of that on the internet, so anyone can still look at that. And the idea was with Project Freeman, as I alluded to earlier, was to be really, I'd heard about free man on the land, and I was skeptical about it, but I thought if some of this is true, it could be used in a good way to kind of show our disdain for some of the things that the system is doing, to people. So yeah, I set up a 3-part project. So I had evaluation phase 1, where I looked at getting all the, and I realize now basically what I did was the trivium, if you know about the trivium and the quadrivium,
Absolutely.
which is another thing we might want to talk about one day.
Yes, I would love to. Yes.
I basically did a trivium on the Freeman ideology. So I did all the grammar, I collected all the data about it I could find. Then I applied my logic and reasoning and studied all the data. And I came up with a plan, and then I implemented it, which is really the rhetoric, So, I basically, this plan was testing this theory out in real life situations. So all the things they said about how money works, and like parking tickets, you don't have to pay parking tickets. That's a scam, and you don't actually have to pay tax. You just are told you do. I mean, you may know from coming from the US that the Federal Reserve and the whole tax system was kind of set up in a kind of devious way near Christmas, when everyone was away on holiday, and it was kind of snuck in. And there's actually no call for anyone to pay individual income tax. There's only a call for tax on corporations' profits. So one of the ideas is they turn people into corporations through the registration of their birth. Right. So I studied all of that, and I found basically about 85% of it to be true from my own experience. So I actually got parking tickets. I wrote conditional acceptances for them. I submitted alternative offers to contract, and I discharged them. I didn't pay any fines. It all worked. I sent notices of intent and claims of right to many government departments to stop paying income tax and like road tax, as they call it, and council tax and all these other taxes, because tax is used to fund war and interest on artificial debt to wealthy investors that doesn't really exist. Debt doesn't exist. It's just all made up. Money is made up. It's a construct. It's an artificial matrix construct. So I did all that in real life with real examples in my own life, and I put it all on projectfreeman.com so other people could see it. And it was a great experience. I learned so much from it, and it really gave me a lot of confidence when dealing with so-called figures of authority who feel they have some kind of power over you. But actually, if you know your rights and how to claim them, that all goes away, you know?
Right.
And I had some good real life examples with like tax inspectors from the council, with police. Why didn't I have tax on my car? And bailiffs for so-called debt and all of these things. And I won every situation just by understanding.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, just by understanding how the system works and how to use it, you know? But that became then part one. You know, I realized I've done all that now and I've stopped paying all these taxes and I'm not complicit in war crimes and genocide and ethnic cleansing and all these things. But basically now I've got a lot of time. Now I finished Project Freeman and I'm not spending all day on the internet loading up material and things. You know? Now I'm in my van on the road in France, and I can do whatever I like whenever I want, and all day is open to me, and I can just wake up in the morning and say, what do I want to do? So I realized there was more than just the Freeman stuff to Project Freeman, and actually that was what I'd done, was free my body. And that,
Right.
yeah, it freed me physically to get free and have time to be, just to be, not to do anything, but just to be and open and receive. So then I started part 2 of Project Freeman, which was Free the Mind. And I called it Messages from Home because I found with time and an open mind, you can call it ideas, you can call it intuition, you can call it channeling, you can call it downloads, whatever you want to call it. You can call it tapping into the well of infinite creativity, you know, you can
Yeah.
call it 12th house Neptunian energy. There's many, many names for it. But basically, if you've got time and an open mind, the cosmos is yours. That's how I see it. So one of the reasons the system tries to keep everyone employed, busy and occupied, is because they don't want people to have time with an open mind to receive messages from the universe, because then they won't be doing what the system wants them to do, which is basically working and paying taxes, right? And living in fear and negativity and arguing with each other and killing indigenous people and having empires and invading and colonizing places and killing Palestinians, etc., etc., etc. You know, what they'll actually do is get in touch with nature and actually figure out why they're here and what their mission is, and live that, you know, live their mission.
Right. Correct.
So, so yeah, right. You know this. I know
Yeah.
you've got a similar sort of history
Yeah.
to me in the corporate world and this kind of thing, right?
I
So you know
left
what I'm
it,
talking about.
walked
Yeah,
away, and found my rhythm. Yes.
absolutely. You find your rhythm. That's the point. Yes, exactly. So yeah, part 2, messages from home. So that involves a thing I called from serf to self. So from like being a slave to being your true spiritual self, like a 9-step journey, how to do that based on what I'd done myself. And then I started presenting that at festivals, including music, because I realized a lot of the songs I'd written were about this kind of thing, you know, and
Right.
how you get free. I also did a thing in there called the 9 worlds of the base 3 universe,
Mm.
which was what I'd realized about how the universe is structured and where we are in it and how we can work with those fractals layers of it, you know.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's another phase. That's kind of phase 5 now. And then phase 6 was what I call break free. And it was break free of the control of consciousness by clocks and calendars. And at the time I had constellations in there, interestingly, because at that
Ah.
time, yeah, I thought astrology was about constellations, and I thought that that was one of the ways the system was kind of controlling people. All right.
Uh-huh.
I now know that is not true, and there's a lot of confusion about constellations and astrology and what that all means, but that's another big discussion. So we'll
Yeah.
leave it
Yeah.
there for now. But
Okay.
particularly clocks and calendars are used to control our consciousness, consciousness and how we actually behave, because we do actually do things. It's Saturday, I'm not working, but I have to go shopping. It's Sunday, I need to rest. It's Monday, I have to go back to work. You know, I can't go to the beach. I have to go to work and do this job. And then then I have to have dinner, and then I have to get the kids ready, and then I have to go to bed and get up and do it all again, you know? So it literally controls our behavior, even though we don't realize it, and we don't even think about it because we've done it all our lives, you know?
Yes.
And so phase 6, break free of clocks and calendars, that's where my calendar came from.
Beautiful.
Right. And then, so that was part 2, free the mind. And then I thought, right, now I can try to free my spirit.
Okay. Okay.
So having done the calendar and stopped using the Gregorian slave and day week, as I call it, control system,
Okay.
which comes from the Roman Empire and the Catholic Church, you know, so there's 2 good reasons to get rid of it. And I had this other calendar with a nature-based cycle in sync with the seasons, with the natural flow of nature. So yeah, now I feel good to start really freeing my spirit, you know. So how do I raise my vibration? And of course I'd already done it by doing the other things I'd already done.
Exactly. Especially the piece of being in nature. Yeah.
Right, exactly. That was the biggest thing, just being in sync with nature. So for the last 10 years, I've been banging on about being in sync with nature, be in sync with nature. Don't be in sync with the calendar and the system, be in sync with nature, you know. So yeah, so part 3 was free the spirit. And again, in 3 parts. So there's 9 phases to this project altogether, which I love because 9 is a cosmic number and it's a gateway to spirit number.
Right.
So phase 7 is what I call astronomology. And I love the name of your podcast, your strapline, Where Spirituality Meets Humanity, because basically astronomology uniting of astronomy, the left brain science, and astrology, the more right brain metaphysical science, right?
Right.
And what I say that is it's the reunion of science and spirituality. And if you do that, you get a scientual experience.
I love it.
Because I love puns and wordplay, I have to say.
Yeah.
So I try and put puns into everything I do. So my brain just does it anyway. I can't help it. It's a bit like an affliction, you know. So yeah. So I've got astronomology, which I'm now, you know, I now do workshops about that. So let's look at, you know, don't look at one or the other. Look at them both. Bring them back together like they always
Together.
used to be.
Yes, but not supposed to
Right?
be single categories. Correct. Right.
Right. So use your left brain and your right brain.
Right.
And then you'll activate your pituitary gland and your pineal gland that sit in the middle between the 2 hemispheres. You'll be reuniting your divine feminine with your sacred masculine, and you'll start doing things, the masculine, about things that you love and care about, the feminine. And then you get the star of creation, and then you get into sacred geometry and the seed of life and the flower of life and the tree of life and all of that stuff, you know?
Yes.
So yeah, phase 3 really is, I could sum it up as Hermeticism. So it's called all is one.
Yes.
And it's really Hermetic principles. So yeah, astronomology, then we've got alchemy, there's phase 8. And then phase 9 is ascending. And that's really working with the great year, which I do a presentation about, and realizing where we are in the great year and how we raise our vibration and our consciousness. And one of the ways I can help people to do that is to break free of the matrix using part 1 of Project Freeman, you know, then break free of the conditioning of their mind using part 2, and then raise your, you know, tap into your higher self, connect your head and your heart, connect yourself, your physical body with your spiritual body back home in the source, and then everything will start going up, you know.
Yeah. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've actually laid that out in the trivium, quadrivium kind of format anyway. So How wonderful is that?
Yeah, I know, right? But I didn't know about the trivium and the quadrivium when I did it. So, you know, and it's amazing when you kind of just do things intuitively, and then later you
Yeah.
find out that this is ancient knowledge that's been around for thousands of years, you know? It's like,
Mhm.
wow, it blows your mind. It's like I'm connecting to my ancestors, you know?
Yeah, and I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm realizing that so much has been done. So much has been done to separate us to think in a divisive way, you
Yeah,
know? And the more that we think in a divisive way, like I'm a left brain thinker, I can't be a right brain thinker. I'm a right brain thinker, I can't be a left brain thinker. And like, what am I, an anomaly? Because I can balance the left and the right brain. I'm just as strong in the arts as I am in the science and the sciences and the mathematics and everything else, right? So
absolutely.
here we are, you know, they even, well, the system even has us convinced that we can do one or the other, but not both. And both is like an anomaly, you know, and it's
Absolutely.
not. And then I'm sitting here listening to you talk about the conditioning that we have, and you're absolutely right from birth.
From
Because
birth, yeah.
one of the things with my frustration with corporate life is that I was tired of corporate life taking my time. You know,
Absolutely.
first I started off doing the 80-hour weeks and then I cut back to 60-hour weeks. And I'm like, why can't I do 40? You know, and then I'm doing the 40 hours weeks. It's like, why do I have to work this way? Why is this
Yeah.
the only way that I can work to live comfortable? And it's killing
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
because my
Yeah.
health was compromised, everything was compromised from the stress and everything else. And then I long to do something that I love. And it's like I can't get there. I can't. Why can't I get there? Why am I working so hard and I'm living to work instead of working to live? Well, what's wrong with this? And
Yeah.
it just didn't sit right. And you have these epiphany at times, and a lot of times people will just dismiss it and they go, well, this is the way it is, and it can't be any other way. And then they find themselves depressed in their lives. And they
Yeah.
just, and that's where the slave part comes in. You're slave to the system, you're slave to the routine, and you just don't see another way of life, which is why I love your project. Because anyone who's listening to this broadcast and you're at that precipice of time, it's like you've been in corporate life for a certain amount of time and they don't, corporate people do not know how to break away. They're petrified. They're petrified of compromising how they live. They're petrified of compromising being able to attain stuff, the materialism, you know, that they
Yeah.
want, that so living comfortable. And that compromise is in place or perceived, and they're lost.
Yeah.
And
I was lost in that world. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so was I. So was I. And it was the longing in my heart. And one of the things that I've learned, and I coach and I teach this, is that your heart will always have you grow. Your heart will always take you to that uncomfortable place. And it's like your ego will keep you where you are because it's in its bubble and it's like, I'm comfortable here. I know this place. I like this place. I know how to operate in this place. But our heart always, when we honor our heart's desire, it always takes us outside of that boundary to grow and to take a leap. Take a leap of faith, take a leap of understanding, take a leap of purpose. And a lot of us ignore what's in our hearts.
Absolutely. Yeah. But you know, it keeps knocking and it doesn't go away, you know,
It doesn't.
because it wants us to be free, you know. Our higher self wants us to realize why we're here and the mission that it gave us when we came here. Um, you know, and it won't go quietly, you know. I mean,
Mhm.
eventually, if you ignore it, it will give up, I think. But for a long time, while you while you have a window of opportunity to awaken, it will keep knocking on that window, you know, until you open
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah. I
for sure.
love what you have in background, and I want you to comment what you have in background written behind you just a little bit, would you?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have. So if I can get it all in, it says, love is the answer. Love is the reason. So moving forward only in love. Okay. So it says the aim of life is love.
Mhm.
The purpose of life is love. And the lesson of life is love is all you need. And that's it.
And it's so
So
true.
that's the bit at the
So,
bottom.
so true. You know, it's funny because a lot of times what I will do is a meditation. And one of the meditations I love to do is to have people strip away all that they perceive as important that's in this human plane. Because when you strip away all of the human definitions of what life is supposed to be, and you come down to the fact that you're an energy being in a physical container, what do you
Yep.
have? What you are. And it's really love. It's
Yeah.
love.
Love. Yes,
It's,
absolutely. I love you, Anolia, and I love me too, you know?
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And
And the
then,
same here.
yeah, and this is why I loved the Beatles growing up, because this was their message, especially George Harrison, John Lennon. You
Yes.
know, everything they became was about love and peace. And even though John was maybe more violent and for lots of wounded healer kind of reasons in his younger life, he saw that and he worked on it and he became an advocate for peace and love, you know. Um and George obviously connected with the spiritual nature from the East, from India particularly, and kind
Hmm.
of opened a lot of us up to that with people like Ravi Shankar and the ones who came before him, like Sri
Yeah.
Teswa Giri, who George put on the cover of Sergeant Pepper, you know, saying, "Look, check this guy out," you know,
Yep.
and that was amazing for me because I'd been looking at that cover since I was 10 years old, and now I ended up creating a calendar whose year number is derived from the great year cycle, which is explained by Sri Teswagiri in his book, The Holy Science. And the same
Mhm.
picture on the cover of that book is the same picture that's on Sgt. Pepper album cover, you know. And again, I just saw that as a massive synchronicity for me, like saying this, you are on the right path, keep going, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, love is all we need. And I really got to the point when I was living in my van that I realized what scientists and astronomers call dark matter and dark energy is actually love. It's not dark at all. So,
Hmm.
you know, all the stuff we can see and measure in the universe is only 5% of the matter of the mass of the universe, okay? And Nassim Haramein does a lot of good stuff on this. Um, and they say, well, we don't know what the other 95% is, so we'll just call it dark something, you know. But it's love, you know. If you tap in to love, there's an infinite supply of love.
There it is.
But if you only concentrate on the 5%, you know, you're missing all that love. So yeah, just get into some dark matter. You know, and what's also interesting is that really to reach love and to live in love, you have to do the shadow work and go down through the underworld, all the Greek mythology stuff, Hades, the underworld, face all your shadows, face your demons, you know, embrace them, thank them for the lesson and let them go. And you can emerge free on the other side, enlightened, you know, all this classic stuff, the hero's journey, you know, it's all about getting to the point where you live in love and love yourself and all around you, you know. Yeah.
And the totality of you, who you are, and what you bring to the table, because we just want to love parts of ourselves. Again, going right back to that divisive piece, like this part of you is okay, that part of you isn't. You
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely. Well, you know, it's the art of war, isn't it? Lao Tzu.
it is.
It's or Sun Tzu or whatever. I'm sorry, I
Mhm.
forget which. I don't think it's Lao Tzu. I think that's the I Ching guy. But Sun
No,
Tzu was
it's
it? Yeah,
don't see, yes.
Sun Tzu,
Or
right? The art of
yeah,
war. You know, divide and conquer, right? Divide and
right,
conquer. You know, and that's
right.
what the machine, because they know how this stuff works. They know how energy
And they're
works in the
good at
universe.
it.
They're
They're good
very,
at
very good at it. You have to say
it.
hats off to these guys
Very
because they
good.
know what they're doing. Yeah.
They
But we've
absolutely
just
know
got to see that, yeah, like you were saying, and break free of that division and not argue with each other about which part of the thing is best. Just accept both and all parts of things, you know.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
We're coming up on an hour. Litmus, you know
Wow,
that I
really?
forever. I love it because we didn't even touch on the zodiac piece and of the depth and the richness you bring to the zodiac, the depth and the richness you bring to metaphysics. I want to tap into all of that. So I'm going to ask you, would you please, please come back? Because I want to have these conversations with you. Absolutely.
Enolia, I can't think of a better way to spend an hour.
Thank you. Thank you. So for our audience, and with what you bring to the table so powerfully with Project Freeman, what would you say to that person who is thinking along the lines of taking a leap and possibly leaving their corporate life or possibly changing their lifestyle in midlife where they're most petrified because all of the responsibilities are just loaded on them? What would you say to that person?
I would say to them, listen to your little voice, your intuition. There's a reason you're feeling this way. All right. There's a reason that the little voice keeps nagging at you. And that little voice, you can give it a name. Give it a name, okay? Give it a character. Give it a nature. And then also name your ego as well. Give that a nature and a character. And start realizing when your ego is talking and when your little voice intuition is talking. So mine is called Melvina.
Uh-huh.
Okay, because it's me little voice inside, and she's now a feminine. She started off as a masculine, but she's now a feminine. And my ego is called Gregory, and because Gregory has ego in it, and he's very much more masculine. But once I started realizing which was Gregory and which was Melvina, it made things a lot clearer. So I would recommend that. And then you've really got to, if you listen to your Melvina, she will connect you to your higher self and help you, and it will send you messages and synchronicities and signs that you're on the right path. But yes, it does take a leap of faith because you may have a family and responsibilities and bills to pay and all this, and it can be very scary. But to overcome that, really just connect back to your inner child. Just remember what it was like when you were a little kid running around having a laugh and all the things you dreamt of in your life. And ask yourself how many of those things you dreamed of doing as a child, how many of them are you actually doing now, and try and reconnect to that and reconnect that to your higher self and your life mission, and just go for it, go for it. Like, yeah, it's the classic in all the mythologies. At some point, we just have to let go and trust the universe. We just have to step off the cliff, take the leap of faith, and the universe will put a bridge there. Like that scene in the last Indiana Jones film, I think, or is it the first one? When he's like, oh no, a leap of faith. And he steps
Yes,
off
yes,
this
yes.
chasm, and then he realizes this stone bridge there that he couldn't see,
Right,
if your intuition is right and all the things you're thinking about are what you really should be doing for the best for you, those around you, and the collective, the universe will put a bridge there for you to step across. And you will get from your life that's not fulfilling you in the corporate world, and you will reach the other side in what we might call the promised land, where you are being your true spiritual self, you are living your life mission, and you are waking up every day, can't wait to get out of bed, jumping out of bed with excitement and enthusiasm, saying, oh, another great day to do my mission, how great is life, how good could it be? So that's a long answer, but basically trust yourself, listen to your little voice, connect with your higher self, connect with your inner child, and go for it.
I absolutely love it. And you're talking to two people who actually did, because we, like you said, come from the same background in terms of the corporate life, and then doing a 360-degree or 180-degree turnaround, just
That's right, 180, yeah.
out and living life. and living our dreams and daring to step out there and do it no matter what the flow of people is saying. Don't do it, you're gonna this, you're gonna that, you know, trying to
Hmm.
create fear as you take the lead. So I love it. I think that if you're daring to do that, you should have the conversation with you, Paul, I'm sorry, Litmus A. Freeman, who brings the plethora of knowledge and experience to fruition in terms of letting go and changing your life. And I've done it too. I completely let go, changed my life, and living in the unknown and loving it. Living in the
Yeah,
unknown.
absolutely. Absolutely. Just surrendering, you know, and yeah, it is, yeah, letting go. And, you know, I noticed you almost said Paul there.
And
So if
it's
we,
funny because he came to my mind and I was like thinking, oh my God, well, okay.
yeah, well, let's just before we go, I was born as Paul of the family Haley, okay? And I want to,
Ah,
so I'm not sure if you saw that somewhere or if you just intuitively thought Paul,
I
but
intuitively started calling you Paul, and it was like, oh no, no, no. And then I was thinking, okay, maybe it's the Paul that we both know. So I don't. It was just like, okay,
no,
thank
my birth name was Paul of the family Haley, and of course that is in capital letters with Mister. That's a corporation created by the registration of my birth by my parents without my consent. So I want to thank Paul because Paul did all the corporate world. He woke up and started paving the way for me to become Litmus A Freeman and really, you know, live my life rather than exist in. That's a big difference. So yeah, thanks, Paul. Paul still does all the admin. He still does all the matrix stuff. He still interacts with the council if he has to, you know, and I stay free in the free world, and that's how I do it, you know.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing that.
That's
Truly,
okay. I
yeah.
have 4 planets in Gemini, so that probably answers a lot there, you know. I'm literally 2 people, you know.
Yeah, many of us have to be.
Yeah.
Whew. So I want to thank you so much. And that is projectfreeman.com. And any other ways that people can get in contact with you?
Yeah, if you want to look at all my websites, which includes the calendar and my music, you know, I would love to talk music one day because
Yes.
obviously that's one of the quadrivium as well. You
Mhm.
know, yeah, I've written many songs and poems. I've recorded a lot of them. They're on my website. If you go to litmusafreeman.net, um, you've got all my websites linked on that page, including Project Freeman, the Universal Celestial Calendar, Freeman Music, Project Freeman Music, astronomology, wisdom workouts, and all sorts. So yeah, you can get it all through litmusafreeman.net.
Excellent, excellent. Litmus, this has been wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here, for showing up, for sharing your heart, for sharing your stories. And I'm excited to have you back. And I
Look forward
just
to
want
it.
to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Enolia, for everything you're doing and putting all this stuff out there. It's really important, and we need that, you know, to share with people. So thank you for giving me a platform to do that on.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you like what you heard, please subscribe, please like us, please share, share, share. Somebody needs to hear this. Somebody needs to hear how to break away.
Yeah,
So
somebody right now in the corporate world, right?
that's right, that's right. So if you know that certain someone, share this podcast, let them listen, let them get in contact. That's litmusafreeman.net and get the plethora of information that's out there. You're not starting it out. Somebody has already paved the way. Thank
Yeah,
you,
break
Litmus.
free, guys, break free.
Take care and goodbye.
Peace, love,
Bye-bye.
and freedom.